Hello and welcome. I'm the Big Shot Critic, and today we're going to be answering the question on everybody's mind: why is Star Trek IV set in 1986? I have received literally thousands of emails, and not one of them is about this. But Star Trek IV can teach you a lot about how choosing the right setting for your story can make a huge difference. Let's get started. In the past, my videos were centered around movies, but I focused in on the filmmaking technique in the movie that I found most interesting. Well, now I'm just going to center the video around the technique that I find interesting. That'll give the video more focus. I'm always going on about how movies need to be more focused, and I thought I should start practicing what I preach. In this case, the technique is using the right setting for your story. I'll breeze through the premise of Star Trek IV: The Voyage Home to give you some context, and then we'll talk about setting. This video will contain spoilers for Star Trek II, III, and IV, so if you don't want to know that Snape kills Dumbledore at the... I hope they clicked away already. I'm just kidding with you. That's a spoiler for Lord of the Rings. The Voyage Home picks up right where Star Trek III: The Search for Spock left off, and completes the trilogy of Star Trek II, III, and IV. A mysterious probe that disables everything in its path is headed for Earth. Meanwhile, Kirk and his crew have all decided to return to Earth and face the consequences of their actions from the previous movie. Spock is now resurrected and back to life, but his full Spock character is not yet restored. He's not all there yet. Because he was brought back on Vulcan, his Vulcan half is present and accounted for. Vulcans are all about logic, so restoring his Vulcan self was just a matter of putting all the information back in place. But Spock is half Vulcan and half human, and restoring his human half is not as simple. Spock talks to his mom, his human parent, and they have a little heart-to-heart. Really, though, it's more like a heart-to-brick wall, because he's so out of touch with his human feelings. She sets him forth on a journey to discover humanity again. This is the thematic lens through which the whole story is told. Spock is not the main character, but he is involved in all the action. And since all his crewmates are full human, their journey together gives Spock ample opportunity to rediscover his humanity. You might be thinking, gee, that's really great, but what does any of that have to do with 1986? Well, we're getting to that. Star Trek IV is a time travel movie. And no, it's not retro like Wonder Woman 1984. Star Trek IV came out in 1986, and the characters travel back in time to modern day. And in 1986, modern day was 1986. Remember that mysterious probe that I said was headed for Earth? Well, it arrives at Earth and starts messing everything up. The probe is gigantic, and it's sending out a signal that is vaporizing Earth's oceans. No one knows why, no one can stop it, and Earth is in danger. When Kirk and his friends find out they can't return to Earth to stand trial because it's under attack from this probe, they break out the champagne and call it a day. No, I'm just kidding. They leap into action to investigate and save the day. Because the signal is aimed at the ocean, Kirk has the bright idea to adjust it and see what it would sound like underwater. Upon hearing the sound, Spock quickly realizes it is whale song. The probe is trying to communicate with humpback whales. The only problem is, in the 23rd century, humpback whales are extinct. So that's why they decide to travel back in time to 1986. They gotta go get some whales and bring them back to the future. So they all hop in their DeLorean, spaceship, and go back in time to save some whales. Now, the origins of the probe are never really explored, and that's a great story choice, but I can't help but wonder why a probe designed to talk to whales immediately starts vaporizing oceans when it detects no response. That seems very irresponsible to me. That would be like burning down someone's house because they didn't answer your phone call. Are these whales in some kind of abusive relationship? Who knows? Once they're back in 1986, it's just a matter of finding some whales, fixing their ship, and returning safely to the 23rd century. Now let's talk setting. How do you think they arrived at the setting of modern day for Star Trek IV? Most people believe it was so they could offer comment on the whaling practices of the day. I myself believed that until I listened to the audio commentary track from Leonard Nimoy and William Shatner. For those of you who don't know, Leonard Nimoy plays Spock and William Shatner plays Kirk, and Leonard Nimoy also directed the movie. In the commentary track, Leonard says more than once that whales were the final ingredient in the story, not the first. He knew a few things that he wanted right away. He wanted it to pick up where Star Trek III left off, he wanted them to travel back in time to modern day, and he wanted the movie to be more lighthearted with no villain. By the way, Star Trek IV is way more lighthearted than Star Trek II or III, and in fact is easily the most lighthearted Star Trek movie to this day. It includes one of my all-time favorite gags when, not being aware of the Cold War going on, Kirk sends Chekhov, the Russian, to the streets of San Francisco to find out where they can find the nuclear vessels.
We are looking for nuclear vessels. Can you tell me where the naval base is in Alameda? We're looking for Hello, we are looking for the nuclear vessels in Alameda. Could you tell me where?
Can you help us?
After deciding it would be lighthearted with no villain and that they would go back in time to modern day, Leonard decided the reason he wanted them to travel back in time was to get something to communicate with a mysterious probe in their time. But he didn't know what they were going to go back to get. He said for a long time he was hung up on the idea that they should go back in time to get a plant. Can you imagine if they went back in time to collect a rare bush or flower? Maybe then the probe would vaporize all the garden soil instead, or garden snakes or something. Comment below what you think they should have gone back to get, and what the probe would vaporize if they didn't. So the commonly held belief that the whole story was framed around whales is untrue. So why set it in 1986? Why modern day? When you consider what we know from the commentary, a picture starts to form that answers that question. The starting point is, by necessity, the end of Star Trek III. That ended with all of them on Vulcan, Spock back to life, but not all there, and serious crimes for Kirk and the others to answer for. Given what Leonard Nimoy did with Star Trek IV, it seems obvious to me that the first thing he hooked onto was that Spock should restore his humanity by observing his friends. Like I said earlier when I was talking about the thematic lens through which the whole story is told. And if your story is going to be about observing humanity, then where better to do it than in real life, modern times, today? Setting it in modern times wasn't a way to comment on modern treatment of whales. It was a way to comment on modern humanity as a whole. That's why whales fit so well as the final ingredient to the story, because they can connect so easily and so visually to the best and the worst that humanity has to offer. The best being the instinct to protect a species, personified in the character of Dr. Taylor, the cetacean biologist, and the worst being the old tradition of hunting the whales, obviously personified by the whale hunters at the end. Besides that, whales are very, very large, and that provides for a lot of interesting challenges for our crew to get them aboard a spaceship and back to the future. So the principle at work here is that the setting for your story should provide the greatest opportunity to explore your theme. The Voyage Home starts out with a question from Spock. What value is there in his human side? He doesn't understand it. What value is there to his feelings and emotions? For the audience, this translates into the question, what value is there in humanity at all? Exploring that means presenting it from more than one side. A preachy movie covering the same topic might only focus on the whaling and condemn humanity altogether. A feel-good movie on the same topic might cover only the preservation efforts and ignore the darker side. But to really explore that theme, you have to give your audience a broader view. If you're trying to tell them that to be human is good, then you must show them reasons why it might be bad. Otherwise, you're being dishonest, and your audience will know. For Spock, this theme could have been explored in any century. However, the Spock character is just a window for the audience. And for the audience, an honest look at humanity means modern times, present day, 1986. Because in reality, it's not his ideas about humanity that are being challenged in the movie. It's yours. That is why Star Trek IV, The Voyage Home, is set in 1986. And that is how the right setting for your story can make a huge difference. And that is why we don't need to save the whales anymore. Kirk already did it. I'm kidding. Conservation is good. Star Trek IV The Voyage Home is a total crowd pleaser and has a great moral to the story of friendship, sacrifice, and heroism. I give it 10 out of 10, and you know what that means. It is finally time to revisit Gene versus George. With the rating of Star Trek IV, Gene takes the lead with 8.3, with George barely trailing at 8. Can you tell I'm a Star Trek fan? For more Star Trek and Star Wars discussion, check out my Gene vs. George playlist. Tell me in the comments below what your favorite example of the use of setting in a movie is. Smash that like button to save the whales. Subscribe if you liked what you saw. Thank you so much for watching, and bye-bye.